Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Stream Dialogue. Today, we're going to talk about the resurgence of the African Revolution. On August 18, 2020, soldiers took control or surrounded the military camp, the Sundiata military camp in Kati in Mali. Soldiers made their way to the presidential palace with no resistance at all. Population celebrated, and this jubilation from the population was understandable. Many in the world, they understood that Mali had problems. The Malian military had problems. The country itself, the political system has collapsed. The country was about to collapse. Of course, those behind this, we know who they are today, felt there was no need to intervene. As Francois Hollande said during his interview a few weeks ago or a few days ago, said that France should have never allowed a coup to happen in Mali. Never, as he said. But Colonel Assimi Goïta and his comrades in received no resistance, whether it's from the presidential guard, had a faction of the military. And this, or the population itself, as a matter of fact, the population jubilated. This was the resurgence. This was the beginning of the resurgence of the African Revolution. Because you see, neocolonialism have lulled Africans and many global South states into accepting colonialism with, let's say, a local face. In Africa, let's say a black face. They would get leaders to carry out the work of the imperialists within these states. Not long after that, over a little over a year, there was a coup d'etat in Burkina Faso in January 2022 throughout the military. You know, there was a need for change, and of course, the political class within this country wasn't doing that. Hence, why it was so easy to carry out a what they call coup d'etat. Population jubilated, of course, same as in Mali. The military, the military under equipped, over are being overpowered by these mercenaries or terrorists. Well, further on, it is found that Damiba himself was not necessarily carrying out the work that the Burkinabe population need, and what the MPSR stated that they would do, which is fight these terrorists, do not negotiate with these terrorists first of all, and seek full sovereignty of the state, because that's the only way, in their opinion, the fight against terrorism, the fight to save Burkina Faso could happen. And then another coup d'etat, just for conversation's sake, happened in September 2022. Damiba, Colonel Damiba was ousted. We know the rest. He was then, exiled to Togo and so forth. And then, we know the argument. And then we moved to Niger, July 2023. The military rose up, led by Presidential Guard General of the Brigade, Abdurrahman Chiani. And we know again, we know the rest that came. Now we are in the Alliance of Sahel stage. Then we move the Confederation of Alliance of the Sahel states, which is Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We know that Burkina Faso, Niger has proclaimed their revolution by the heads of state. So now we are waiting for Mali to proclaim the revolution, even though this is a guy who doesn't speak that much, General Assimi Goïta. But before that, what happened? You see, in the 1990s, Africa was then this, especially West Africa, it was pushed to this so-called democratic system because we had the collapse of the Soviet Union. Many in the West call it the end of history. So now, meaning, you know, the fight against the so-called dictator east or whatever has commenced. They have overcome this challenge, so now Western style government shall rule the world. And the West imperialist system has to carry on, maybe in a different form. We cannot support dictators anymore. We proclaimed that we were fighting for democracy, freedom of freedom, blah, 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 so forth. So democracy was basically pushed on West Africa. Many so-called dictators would then put their suits on. So people like Jerry Rawlings switched from a military government in the 1990s to getting democratically elected. Nigeria itself had its elections. Blaise Compaoré, who overthrew Thomas Sankara, led a military junta for a few years, then himself started to be put his suit on, start to hold election, and he ran whatever you might think so-called democracy kept him in power for a few decades. So now we're in this period. We move to the early 2000s. This new way, the West, in my opinion, the West realized that this, first of all, the population of Africa and in this area in West Africa is growing. This young population, of course, will demand freedom, economical freedom. Of course, they will start to question that we've been in under the so-called democracy and so forth. What have we gained? We've seen these leaders in power for years upon years, you know, political party change, but the life of people never change. And these populations are growing. So the West, in my opinion, the imperialists, let's call them that, the imperialists decided that, especially within the Sahel, with this vast wealth, and West Africa as a whole, this vast wealth, this growing population, well, of course, they will want to demand what is truly theirs. And then the destruction of Libya happened. Because already Africa is starting to speak up again, as in the 1940s. You have leaders within Africa or intellectual within Africa are questioning this neo-colonial system. Somebody like Muammar Gaddafi, he started to speak about, of course, they reformed the Organization of African Union, the OAU, earlier in the 2000s, and now they are talking about creating an African currency. At the time, you had somebody at the head of the African Union, such as Jacob Zuma, who was part of the ANC from back in the day. I'm not saying Jacob Zuma was a revolutionary or anything, but they are looking for something better for Africa. This neo-colonial relationship could not start. And the West, and the imperialists already begun their balkanization, weakening of states within the Middle East, moving to North Africa. It was their time to move to North Africa. So who was the biggest pusher of this sovereign Africa? Let's get a currency. Let's start to trade with each other. Let's reform the African Union. Jacob Zuma himself was saying African Union should not be receiving funding from outside forces and so forth. So there was many reform in the African Union at the time. So then Gaddafi was overthrown, someone who was pushing for African sovereignty. Whatever you think of him as a leader, it doesn't excuse the destruction of a country and destabilization of a region and almost the whole continent. With the destruction of Libya, the imperialist plan set into motion. And of course, they had local help and help on the continent. We've seen evidence being put forward within the UN, an accusation that countries such as Mauritania, Algeria, especially a huge one, are a big supporter of terrorism in the Sahel and in throughout and other areas in West Africa. But also during that time, leaders who resisted French colonialism, at least verbally, they start to realize that this neo-colonial relationship is not desirable for the population. Laurent Gbagbo in Cote d'Ivoire, he won his election fair and square. The puppet that is in power now, or the stooge that is in power now, Alassane Ouattara, lost the election. So the French under Nicolas Sarkozy attacked Cote d'Ivoire, bombed the military, bombed the presidential palace. During this time, a rebel offensive took place. The capital was seized, and the president was dragged away to the ICC, spent years in the ICC, and it came out that he committed no crime. There we go. So in this motion, they've realized that in order to preempt this coming African revolution or this African, demand for sovereignty economically, politically, and so forth, we have to divide these big, big states, especially these powerful states. So Sudan, all of a sudden, South Sudan was created. And during this time, throughout the African continent, there's always been separatist movement in every African country. And the loudest ones are in states that, the bigger the states, there are more, not just geographically, but population wise. Nigeria, yeah, the so called Biafra movement who want to succeed, and so forth. So Nigeria, then again, Nigeria was destabilized. Boko Haram all of a sudden showed up stronger. The north was occupied. Mali itself was occupied, being attacked by these rebels that was in Libya, who made it way down to Mali, down to the Sahel, Burkina Faso, so forth. And a lot of these countries cooperated, Burkina Faso under Blaise Compaoré and other pres- um, proceeding governments cooperated with the separatist movement, so the so-called Azawad movement in Ghana, in Mali, and so forth. They were hosted in Ouagadougou by, Blaise Compaoré and other regime that follow suit. So these people were signing their own debt warrant, and that is the problem with a colonized mind. Somebody who work. I wouldn't call them a puppet. A puppet is brainless. A puppet cannot move without the string being pulled. A lot of these people are willing participants in their own destruction of Africa and their own state. Let's take Alassane Ouattara. He's a functioning body. A puppet will be considered Paul Biya in Cameroon. This guy is like 900 years old, so all his faculty are not working. So now he's a puppet. He's not necessarily a stooge. He's a stooge, but you get what I'm saying. He would be considered a puppet. But ladies and gentlemen, fast forward, Mali was being destabilized. All of a sudden, you have this UN mission, Barkhane led by the French, and so forth. Everybody was in Mali to so-called stabilize Mali, as Francois Hollande said, save Mali. Many soldiers within the region, soldiers from Burkina Faso, were here in the north of Mali fighting terrorists. And one soldier mentioned that while they were in the north, they realized that these foreign forces were not fighting terrorists. They would leave out with digging machine, gone for hours, and when they came back, these soldiers, these foreign forces, had red dirt covered in red dirt. But where they say they went, there were no dirt. That means there were no red dirt. That meant that they dig so deep, searching for natural resources. They found what they're looking till they find that red dirt. I don't know what that red dirt was, but that particular soldier, his name was Ibrahim Traore, and yes, He is the leader of Burkina Faso today. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can see that many of the military soldiers who thought they were doing something right to fight in the north of Mali decide saw the game being played by imperialism. So you see that Ibrahim Traore coming to power is not an accident. Let's put it that way. It's not that he just woke up one day and decided. These people are saw the game being played by imperialism. So breaking up states, large states, geographically, of course, but also large state with states that have large populations. Sudan, large population, large geographically. And you see what's happening now. Those states. And why do they want to break these big states, whether it's population wise or geographical? You see, the bigger the state is, when that state is big, population wise or geographical wise, they can grow economically, politically, which means they can challenge these imperialist countries within Africa. Which bring me to Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest state in Africa, largest country in Africa, population wise. Its economical potential is unimaginable. Therefore, Nigeria have so much separatist group within this country. It is weak politically. Nobody talks about Nigeria anymore. Nigeria does not have a voice on the international stage. Nigeria does not have a voice continentally. Nigeria cannot put any political weight, economical weight anywhere. So, and you see the way Nigeria is being completely humiliated because the security situation is dire. The, the, the economic situation is dire. The political situation is fragile. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the goal of imperialism, neocolonialism, as it continues to lose ground. And I believe the logical conclusion is this. Somewhere within these states, people have the brain to see what is happening. And somewhere, the pressure will give. Meaning, as what happened in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, it is going to happen within these states. And the thing is that these political leaders cannot understand that. They're not wired to think in that way. As a matter of fact, you will see that the leaders of certain countries, let's say Nigeria, they're not looking to save the country. They're looking to save their they're looking to save themselves, save their political career. They don't care if certain part of the country is on fire. This is why they at the head of the military a lot of times they put people who are loyal to them, not necessarily loyal to the country. They put people in position that will save their military career than save the country itself. I know I sidetrack a little bit, but that is important. Now to Mali. Colonel Assimi Goïta said he spent time in Sudan on peacekeeping mission, as Ibrahim Traore spent time with maybe not peacekeeping mission, but they fought in Mali to stabilize Mali. Colonel Assimi Goïta spent time in Sudan. Then South Sudan and Sudan was together. And he saw the same playbook. He saw the playbook that they used in Sudan to separate South Sudan from North Sudan. And he saw all these playbooks being used. And with him in Mali while fighting these separatists and these terrorist groups, he noticed that the same playbook were being used in Mali. Therefore, they had to save the country. And they launched their coup d'etat, which I believe was the new beginning of the African Revolution. Now it has reached its way to Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, And you can see a lot of African leaders are very scared. Not only the African leaders are scared, but the fear in African leaders are not manifested is a manifestation of the fear of neocolonialism. So they're becoming more irrational. Threats, you know, open support for terrorism, as you saw the blatant media support for terrorism, blatant media, you would say support in a lot of the French media against Mali, Niger, and so forth. Remember the propaganda that they said Mali or Bamako will be controlled by terrorism or terrorists in a few days or in a few hours. They've been saying that for over a month, and no such thing has happened. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the beginning of the new African revolution. It means that it will only, the logical step, the logical, the next step is that it will go further. You notice I didn't mention certain states that have had coup d'etats. This is imperialist trying to preempt certain things, but the logical thing is this lava that is moving, it cannot be stopped. It cannot be stopped. So, ladies and gentlemen, this will become a series where we explain more in depth of what is happening on the African continent. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video. If this is your first time, watching this video, I don't need anything else from you but to listen with an open mind, engage if you can, and so forth. So we thank you so much.